Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, it's Stock Up, Stock Down. Week 5 edition, the Eagles are 5-0 after a close 20-17 win over the Arizona Cardinals. We'll continue to recap that game coming up next.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to a Tuesday edition of the podcast, and it's brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before, because BetOnline is where the game starts. I'm Louie DiBiase, and he's Gino Camilleri. You can find our podcast Monday through Friday on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Hit us up on Twitter, at LockedOnBirds, at GC24_football. And at DiBiase LOE. Stock up, stock down today after the Eagles' big win against Arizona on Sunday, 20-17. They're still the only undefeated team left in the NFL at 5-0. First win in the desert since 2001. Gino, it was a crazy close game. We'll get into it today. There's a lot of pros. There's some cons. But overall, a win is a win in this league right now. And the way the league is clustered, we were doing our Locked On Power Rankings before this show started. It's good to be 5-0 right now. The entire NFL is just, like I said, just clustered with 2-3, 3-2. It's all over the place.
I think some early points that we could take away are, one, that maybe the AFC isn't as good as we really expected it to be.
Nobody really seems as good as we expected, you know. I mean, outside of the Bills, Chiefs, and the Eagles.
Right now, we thought the AFC would be walking away multiple 4-win teams in the West. The West is a mess outside of Kansas City. The Dolphins, without Tua right now, they lose to the Jets. You look at the debacle that is the AFC South. The North has Minnesota. Green Bay is still hit or miss. Why did I go to the NFC? What am I talking about? AFC North.
Yeah, but look
Baltimore.
at the NFC, though, too, man. I mean, the Rams are 2-3 right now. The Cardinals, who made the playoffs last year, 2-3. The Buccaneers still don't really, even though they're 3-2, don't look to be the team of the last 2 years that were dominant. I mean, the Green Bay Packers, 3-2, but they just lost to the New York Giants. Even those 2 4-1 teams in the NFC East outside of Philadelphia, Dallas, and New York, it's like, who are they still? We really don't know.
Yeah, the AFC North, as I should have mentioned when I was talking about the AFC, Baltimore, they're up and down as well. And Cincinnati, they're still trying to figure it out. Right now, the best division in football is the NFC East. And
Crazy.
Just looking at the record, looking at who they beat, you got the Cowboys coming off of beating that Rams team. You have the Giants beating Green Bay in London, and the Philadelphia Eagles beating the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, all of these teams beat other NFC powerhouses that we expected to be in the race moving towards the playoffs. But the one sure thing is that the Eagles are 5-0, and they've controlled their own destiny so far. And that's the best part about it. They don't look outside of what they have to do. Week in, week out, they take care of business. Was it the easiest game? Was it the prettiest game? Can you say that maybe it took a step back in terms of how good they actually are? You can make all of those arguments. But to me, they're 5-0. They've beat every test that they have put in front of themselves.
Right, exactly.
You can't argue that they're not. To me, they're the best team. Buffalo had a slip up. Kansas City had a slip
Everybody
up.
Has
the Eagles have
yet
to slip up.
It's the NFL,
That's a true fire number one team as we're talking about it. Do I want them to be number one all the way through? Yeah, that would be excellent. But we have seen throughout history, if you're the number one team, maybe you kind of whittle away in the second half. But these Eagles, every time we say prove us wrong, they've proved us right. And
their slip-ups, man, they don't result in losses so far like other teams have. So you can say the Jacksonville game and the Arizona game weren't perfect, but they still pulled it out against two teams that we expected to make the playoffs or at least compete for it this year. 100%. Arizona made the playoffs last year. Jacksonville, I picked to win the AFC South with Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson. And the way they're doing it again, Gino, is with a lot of things working on both sides of the ball and especially good quarterback play. And that's the thing that you still feel confident, even in these losses that aren't perfect. Jalen Hurts' stock is still rising, and he has now beaten in back-to-back games. He has beaten 2 quarterbacks, and Trevor Lawrence and Kyler Murray. He outperformed both in tough circumstances, by the way. Tougher for him than those two. He's outperformed both of those guys. And I would say most people this past offseason, if you were saying start a franchise with one of those quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, or Kyler Murray, most would have said those other two. And that's the good thing, is to see Hurts outperforming guys that, me myself would have preferred to have those quarterbacks this past offseason.
After Ron Rivera mentioned in his press conference yesterday that quarterback was the issue in Washington, I started to think, is Jalen Hurts the best quarterback in this division right now?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think so.
With the status uncertain of Dak Prescott, with Cooper Rush really just being a player you win with, the only guy you're winning because of right now at the quarterback position in the NFC East is Jalen Hurts. You look at what New York's doing. It's going through Saquon. That offensive line has figured it out. In Dallas, you're still riding that high of the momentum of Cooper Rush. We'll see how long that goes. You look at Washington, which is just a debacle at this current point in time. Jalen Hurts has outperformed other quarterbacks in the NFC. He's outperformed young quarterbacks on the road in harsh environments. This is a player that doesn't go up or down when it comes to how he feels about the game, how he feels about situations, but his play is continuing to elevate week after week after week. And that's what you want out of your quarterback. We've continued to say over the past couple of years, does your quarterback elevate the players around him? Well, it's tough to say that he doesn't when you're just continuing to pick up first downs over and over again and give guys chances to make plays on the next drive and keep your team alive, not turn the ball over. That's everything you could ask for in a quarterback. And Jalen Hurts, without him, do they pick up all of those first downs on those QB sneaks? I'm not so sure about it. He picks up those yards when they need it. They put the game on his back. Shout out to Nick Sirianni for realizing that when it's 4th and 1, there's one play that beats everything. It's a QB sneak. You go off the back and Jason
break the
Kelce.
record for most quarterback sneaks in an entire season, because
if it works, keep doing it.
It always works.
There's no reason to get cute.
The Pro Football Hall of Fame tweeted out yesterday that they've never seen a quarterback start like this, which is true. Jalen Hurts has the most rushing touchdowns of any quarterback through his first 25 starts, even over Cam Newton, who we know was the most productive mobile quarterback of all time when it comes to rushing touchdowns. So we know he's elevating them in the mobility department. Gino, you also saw, just like in 2020, on the road in a tough environment, injuries around him, a close game late, he stepped up in the clutch. But the difference between, and I think I said this on the show on Monday, the difference between that game in 2020, which was a close loss, versus on Sunday, a close win, was he figured things out in the pocket. He was struggling against the blitz a lot throughout that game. But unlike in past seasons where it would take him weeks on end to figure things out, he figured it out at the end of the game. That play still on 3rd and 11. I've watched it probably a million times the past few days. That 3rd and 11 with 4 minutes to go, tied up with a blitz coming on both sides, to finally figure it out in the game, that just showed so much development for me and how things have just slowed down for him. A season high 36 passing attempts, and he had a season high 72.2% completion percentage. I know a lot of those pass attempts were screens, but I thought he made a lot of great decisions, and the biggest one was on the biggest play, and that was huge.
When you look at completion percentage, when you look at lack of interceptions, when you look at the negative plays from Jalen Hurts, they're continuing to whittle away from what they were last year, and especially in what they were in 2020. What you are now seeing is those plays where we continue to say, add that to the arsenal, add that to what he hasn't done, add that to the checklist of things we wanted to see completed. That play, exactly like you said, Lou, 3rd down, game on the line, blitz coming off of both edges, finds his hot route in Dallas Goedert, who does an excellent job reading where the zone is open, sitting in space and delivering the ball. The one ball he completed in the middle of the field all day was in the biggest and brightest spot, Lou. Talk about adapting how you play throughout the game. Arizona made him throw to the edges all day long. They wanted to keep him uncomfortable in the pocket.
Well, and he was dropping his eyes, Gino. It was classic 2021 Hurts, where the minute he felt pressure with a blitz, he was trying to get out of there, even though there were guys open. So to see him figure that out in game is what I love. I mean, that play pumped me up more than I know. It was just a 6-yard when it comes to air yards, like a 6 or 7 yard pass, and it was short of the sticks. But I just love the meaning behind that play.
It's a great tool. It's a great sign of development. When we had Carson Wentz, we're always saying, maybe just hit the check down sometimes. Maybe just hit the guy in the flat. There was also a play where he hit Miles Sanders out in the flat on a check down. He picks up around 4 or 5 yards after he went through all his progressions. That's development as well. He didn't just bail and go and take off. He found his check down. That's an evolution of a quarterback who's continuing to see the game at a slower pace. He's continuing to figure out how to read defenses, how his offense continues to have the best offensive line in football, and how he can overcome the deficiencies if there is an injury. And the thing is, you had Jack Driscoll in there again. Sua Opeta was in there again at times.
Kelce was out. Cam Jurgens was in at times.
Was it the easiest set of circumstances for him to not want to go back to hero ball? Absolutely not. He could have reverted back to college Jalen Hurts or even year one Jalen Hurts. But he let the game continue to develop. And he continued to show that growth as a quarterback and that maturation in his play style to not make the same mistakes and the things that have hindered his development. He is only setting himself up and putting himself in better situations to look back at that tape and say, yeah, I think we've grown in that area. I think I've gotten better in that area. And for your coach to point that out to you and say, this is a good play. That's what you want to continue to see. And there's more good plays out of Jalen Hurts, better completion percentage. He's taking care of the ball. I mean, what more could you ask for in what he has done? And the last point I'll say on this is going back to last year where we talked about that first 5-game series where he threw in volume and then it kind of took a dip. I can't see that taking a dip this year, Lou. I can only see him passing more and more as the season continues to go on.
Looks like
his completion percentage is awesome right now. What, 72% in that last game?
Again, on a season high 36 attempts, he was over 62% in Jacksonville, against Jacksonville. Tough circumstances.
He's a little north of 67% right now, which is very
which
good
is like a 5 to 6% hike from where he was in 2021. Huge development. Hurts is 5 for 5 this year in stock up and stock down right here on Locked On Eagles. We'll get into stock up on the other players on offense and defense coming up next. Today's episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by Tommy John Underwear. Fall is chaos in your pants. You're overheating 1 second and you're freezing the next. To be ready for anything, you need underwear that can handle everything. It's time for Tommy John Underwear. In Tommy John Underwear, you're that much more comfortable so you can do everything better. Name a problem with other underwear, and Tommy John's solved it. Tommy John's breathable, lightweight fabric has 4 times the stretch of competing brands. They come with a no wedgie guarantee, thanks to a non-rolling waistband and legs that never ride up. Plus, they feature a horizontal quick draw fly. Hammock pouch support stops the awkward swing and slap. Give everything something to be grateful for. With over 17 million pairs sold, people love Tommy John underwear. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers, they have fanatics. I love wearing Tommy Johns the last few months, especially in the Northeast right now in Buffalo, the fall. One day it feels like it's 70 degrees. The next day it feels like 30 with winter coming up, preparing for everything. Plus, everything's backed with Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear, or it's free guarantee. Go to TommyJohn.com/lockedon right now for 20% off your first order. 20% off at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. TommyJohn.com/lockedon. See site for details. And guys, we thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Make sure also to check out NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL. Locked On's local experts give you the inside scoop on the 5 biggest games of the NFL weekend, including Sunday and Monday Night Football, plus betting advice from the field's leading expert, Bet Online. Follow NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Louie DiBiase, and he's Gino Camilleri. It's Stock Up, Stock Down, Week 5 edition. The Eagles get to 5-0 after a 20-17 win over the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, stock up to quarterback Jalen Hurts. He's 5 for 5 this year in the stock up department. But Gino also got to give a shout out to that offensive line, stock up on Sunday, specifically center Jason Kelce. That was a vintage performance from one of the greatest Eagles of all time. You know that ankle was banged up, considering he went to the Blue Medical tent, came off the field, went back in, was laying on the ground, had to come off again and miss about half a quarter where Cam Jurgens comes in. I think he's out for the game. And this guy finds a way to get back on the field in the second half. And it wasn't just him. Landon Dickerson came back too and had a couple huge pancake blocks. To see them all come together with Jordan Mailata already out and that final drive just grind out 7 minutes of offense when the game is tied up, running down Arizona's throats. I mean, this offensive line, what can you say? Sometimes they're so good, and Jason Kelce especially, that we don't even talk about them because we just know what they do. But we have to highlight that performance on Sunday. So gritty.
An absolute warrior by every stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
The MRI comes back and says he has a low ankle sprain. And that's not easy to come back from. I mean,
especially
people have rolled their ankle,
man.
right?
I mean,
yeah. Imagine hundreds of pounds of force falling on your ankle.
Every play.
And you have to not just walk it off, but come in and play at a high level. That's the difference between being hurt and being injured for all you young football players. When your coach says that, are you hurt or are you injured? Jason Kelce defines what it is to play through injury. He has done it time and time and time again. Last year, he almost hyperextends his elbow off of his body, comes back with a brace on, and plays lights out the rest of the season. On Sunday, shout out Cam Jurgens, who I was pretty pumped up to see in there. I thought he looked explosive in those couple reps. I thought he looked fiery and angry and ready to go. Can't wait to see when he gets in game action. But Jason Kelce, he is the present. He is the past, and I wish he could be the future for multiple more years, but they've set themselves up with Cam. But it comes at learning under Jason Kelce. What a great person to have as your mentor, to literally teach you the ins and outs. That is his project. When you hear how they talk about what Cam Jurgens is asked to do on the offensive line, everybody says, oh, he's with Kelce. He's training with Kelce. They know that that's the heir apparent, but right now this guy gives you so much. The heartbeat to your team, man. Nick Sirianni said it. He said 62, this guy's a warrior. He comes out there, battles every single snap. Landon Dickerson, same thing. That's what it takes in the National Football League. Just when you think that you're out and you think you might not have a chance, you battle. You battle week in, week out, play in, play out. And Kelce makes a great point. He says, I never know when it's going to be my final snap, so I'm going to play every snap like it is. That's the mentality every guy on this team should play with.
And Suopeta stepped up when he had to play Jack Driscoll.
Yeah, shouts out to both of them.
Yeah, Jeff Stoutland just always has his offensive line ready. So impressive against Arizona. And then, Gino, how about this? When was the last time we said stock up to your safeties? Marcus Epps and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. CGJ getting an interception in the first quarter. Marcus Epps making some big plays.
That's why you trade for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. That's the player who he is. He was talking all day to Zach Ertz, getting him really riled up.
And then tagging him in his Instagram post the next day. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about
I
this.
didn't see that.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. But that's the player you wanted, somebody that can bring that gritty Philly-esque type of mentality to your defense. And he did it in multiple ways, Lou. People were saying, this guy's just a nickel cornerback. No, you and I watched him at Florida. We saw what he could do as an all-around safety.
Right.
And this game, he did it. His interception, he picks up by playing deep. He's almost a center fielder at that point. And then he's down in the box, covering Zach Ertz, filling gaps, has 10 tackles on the day. Marcus Epps, an unbelievable pass breakup in one of the bigger moments where he plays all the way through, rips that ball out, gets the stop.
And some of the run stops he's made too, by the way. I mean,
he might be the best,
way more physical hitter than I ever gave him credit for.
He might be the best gap-filling player outside of TJ Edwards on this defense.
It's a good point, man. He's been doing it all year. I agree.
You just see when he identifies his lane, he doesn't wait. He will crash through his lane, whether it's the alley, whether he's filling the edge on the C gap if he has to, whether he's coming down and filling the middle at the point of attack. Marcus Epps, I don't know where this team would be if they didn't take a waiver claim on him a couple years ago.
Just another classic Howie Roseman value find, man. I mean, TJ Edwards, Jordan Mailata, Quez Watkins, the list goes on.
He's more than value, man. He's a starting caliber player in this league right now, and they would be ill-advised to not try and extend him and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
I can't imagine it'll be so expensive. Together. Yeah, I agree. I mean,
No,
this
absolutely.
is, heading into the season, we thought it was going to be Anthony Harris and Marcus Epps with Jaquaski Tart. There was a point in time where I thought the starters were going to be, I didn't even think it was going to be Harris, or I should say Epps, excuse me. I thought it was going to be Harris and Tart. And to see now this duo, it's beyond what I was hoping for this year. My expectations were very low.
Whenever we think that Howie Roseman doesn't have something up his sleeve, he does. And yet again, he made that CGJ move not too long before the season had started. And look at how instrumental that move has been. He has done that time and time and time and time again. But finally, he did it at the safety position, which is the one he just was so very long.
Yeah, I totally agree. Stock up to Marcus Epps and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Gino, also stock up to the first-round pick of 2022, defensive tackle Jordan Davis. He had the best game of his career when I was at the game against the Jaguars last week, and he topped it against Arizona. It wasn't just the dominating run filling that you saw. It was the pass rush. He won multiple times with a bull rush, and there was one rep where he flushed Kyler Murray to the right side, and it ended up being only like a 1-yard gain because Davis, he was going with the bull rush. He got stopped, and he had an underneath counter. I'm like, where did that come from?
Dip and rip, baby.
Yeah, just the dip and rip. To see the development of Davis as a pass rusher, really going back to that Week 3 game against Washington, that first play where he got to Carson Wentz, got his hands up, and deflected the pass. That's why his snaps are increasing. He played 42% of the snaps on Sunday. That's the most of his career so far through a month and a week. Davis, by the way, is PFF's 12th highest graded defensive tackle this year. The snaps are going to keep going. If he's going to dominate like this against the run and get to the quarterback, that's what we envisioned the ultimate ceiling for this kid. And to see him, chasing down screens at 365 pounds and he's 6'6", just incredible, an absolute unicorn.
I think the most wild part of watching Jordan Davis is that if you've watched enough tape on interior defensive linemen and you see them get engaged on a bull rush, a lot of the times there will be an initial kind of pushback at the top of their body where their momentum is halted for a second, then they get back into their rush. When offensive linemen put their hands on Jordan Davis, this freaking guy doesn't move. He is a brick wall. If you see the one where I feel bad for their young center that had to take the place of Rodney Hudson, Jordan Davis engages on him and buckles this guy's knees within the blink of an eye, and the kid stood no chance. You're going against a 6'4", 300-some-odd pound athletic unicorn that is incredibly good at stopping the run. Lou, when he's in there, I'm incredibly confident that they're going to be able to stop the run.
Especially those 5-man fronts when you got Hargrave, Cox, and Davis in there, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, when they go with that bear look where they get those 3 interior guys in there and then put the 2 edge guys out wide, that's where they're doing their best in the run game. But not only that, Jordan Davis really fits what they look for in defensive linemen from the interior. If you look at Fletcher Cox, he made a very similar play from the interior, chasing a running play down out to the edge and using that competitiveness and that motor and that effort. We always talk about what is the one thing they look in defensive linemen, Lou? Motor, effort, physical toughness. This kid has it. And to see him now start to develop in just 5 short games, a little bit of a counter move to his pass rush. The
and
more
his get off
pass
is way
rush
faster
games to develop. That's what I'm saying. Like if his get off is continuing to get better, if he's going to continue to be explosive, if he continues to refine his use of hands and his ability to add pass rush moves to his arsenal, the sky really is the limit for what this kid can do within your system.
All right, Gino, we'll get into stock down. Coming up next, there's a couple pieces of the defense that we want to get into that almost cost the Eagles that game. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
And first, we have a message from the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, betonline.net. If you've been following the Locked On Eagles podcast for the last couple years, we've been doing an exercise called LOE3. Each week, Lou and I, we pick 6 total player props, 3 each, from betonline.net's vast variety of player props that you build. You go in there. It's like a sandcastle. You go to the beach. The world is your oyster, and you can do whatever you want with it. BetOnline.net is the same exact way. You could bet on NFL, NBA, NCAA football, NCAA basketball is coming back soon enough. Premier League's going on. You could bet on any boxing, any MMA action, and you can make the most incredible player props that Lou and I bet on every single week. We went 5-1 last week.
Yes, sir.
In our props. We're getting hot, just like the Eagles. 5 wins this week. And there's only one place that we do it. It's at betonline.net. And there's one reason why. It's because where the game starts.
This is Locked On Eagles. I'm Louie DiBiase. He's Gino Camilleri. It's a Tuesday edition of the show. Stock up, stock down, stock up to Jalen Hurts after that win against the Cardinals. Jordan Davis, Jason Kelce, Marcus Epps, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Gino, we could have said Devontae Smith too. 10 catches for over 80 yards. A gritty performance. Dallas Goedert totally outperformed Zach Ertz. They're undefeated in revenge games, and I think that's it this year. Will they play Wentz again? Maybe if he starts, if he survives.
Jason Peters
10.
has got it coming next week,
that's
brother.
Right, yeah, Jason Peters. I don't know. He's banged up, though, right now, so we'll even see if he ends up playing.
Really?
Yeah.
Jason Peters
Come on, man. He's like 60
field?
at this point. Give the guy some credit. So a bunch of stock ups after that win against Arizona. Gino, when it comes to stock down, I think we got to say Jonathan Gannon, the Eagles defensive coordinator, I thought he came in with a beautiful game plan of a lot more man coverage with a spy. Kazir White was kind of following Kyler Murray throughout the first quarter. The 4-man rush was winning. I thought the 4-man rush was winning the entire game. But then, again, as we said yesterday, he got way too comfortable in the second quarter, played a lot more soft zone coverage. The 4-man rush was getting there, but they just didn't have time because Kyler Murray's getting the ball off in 1.5 seconds. And I thought, he almost let the Cardinals end up pulling out that win. I mean, what was it? 5 drives with over 300 yards, and they went on a 17-3 run to eventually tie the game back up. A disappointing setback for Gannon. I think he's had a great year, but there's just a few times this season where he falls back into his old ways of 2021, and I think he's just got to trust this personnel to stick on it and play more aggressive. I didn't like the way he called up the dogs with 2.5 quarters to go.
When you have a 4-man pass rush that we have seen in Philly for the longest time, you have to be able to at least press for 1.5 to 2 seconds, because this is very reminiscent of the Eli Manning game. I believe it's the last time that the Eagles played Eli Manning, where he's getting the ball out in around like 1.8 seconds. It was something egregious, and they were just playing soft zone coverage. The 4-man couldn't hit home. When you are an offense that game plans against the Eagles by getting the ball out quickly, and they are playing off coverage, that's where you see the most success. That's where you see the most yards given up against. That's where you see the most touchdowns come from, and that's where you see the most opportunities arise, because they aren't letting the dogs off the leash like they have in the last couple weeks. You look at the Justin Jefferson Minnesota game. Yeah. Darius Slay, he was a rabid dog. He was playing his game. He was physical. He was in Justin Jefferson's face. He was traveling with them. And look at the result. You went back to an ideology where, like you said on, I think, our post-game show, where you thought you had Steven Nelson back there. You have James Bradbury, who hasn't had a ball completed on him in the longest time.
Want to hear a crazy Bradbury stat, by the way?
Go ahead.
He's the 10th most targeted CB in the NFL this year with 31 targets, and he's allowing the second lowest passer rating. This is not Steven Nelson.
That's insane. Yeah, that's absolutely insane. And Slay, the first game where he's not hobbling on the field, where he does have a little bit of an injury, which he was the past couple weeks, why not let him go play free and fly around? And not just that, why just completely abandon any type of man coverage? Like, adjust. Maybe try and bracket Hollywood Brown with a safety in a corner. Like, try something else other than just being safe and not want – I hate I don't want anything to beat us deep. I mean, well, you're just going to get beat underneath, and they're going to cut you to death 1,000 times.
Thing in sacrifice. I don't like sacrificing one thing for another thing. I would rather get beat deep when trying to stop everything.
And then you adjust. Right. You don't adjust.
The Cardinals are one of the worst teams this year when it comes to explosive plays. And yeah, they have Hollywood Brown, who's one of the better deep threats in the NFL, but you have Darius Slay and James Bradbury. So yes, like you said, if you get burned, then you adjust. But the Cardinals, every pass that they threw that game was underneath. It was screen passes and it was dump offs. So you have to adjust. I don't know why he said, we better like back up, as if they got burned. They never got burned. Why the adjustment came, it was only because they were winning. Honestly.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. I think it was, we have a lead and let's just try and play it safe, when that's not the nature of the National Football League. If you watch that Monday Night Football game, if you saw some of the conservative mistakes that the Raiders made, it came back to bite them in the end. The Philadelphia Eagles on offense, they take risks. They live and die by taking risks. How many times did they go for it on 4th and short with that QB sneak and pick it up the other day?
Yeah.
Jonathan Gannon, it's like he just wants to sit in a padded room and doesn't want any outside things to affect how he calls plays, when in reality, Nick Sirianni should have been in his ear saying, what the hell are you doing?
Because
we can't be playing like this.
And, into the fourth quarter, they got lucky they missed that field goal, or they were probably going into overtime because he never adjusted.
Looks like Milton Williams blocked that field goal.
Yes, I think he certainly got a hand on that for sure. And, the other issue, stock down at tackling, they weren't tackling well in the open field. So why you call off the dogs when you have to make up ground through tackling makes even less sense to me, because as good as Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was in coverage, he missed some tackles. T.J. Edwards in the first couple quarters was struggling. I think a lot of guys, the angles they were taking were suspect. And that was the other issue, is the Cardinals had all this space, and with the way the way the Eagles were tackling too, they were eating up the soft coverage. So those two it's just a bad combination. That was kind of, again, what the Detroit game was week 1, how they almost pulled that game out.
And it wasn't like you were even trying to stack the box to defend the run and drop guys into coverage and make it look difficult. Right. They just sat in basic 2 high quarters coverage a majority of the game and just let them hit open zones. And yeah, Hollywood had a couple intermediate area catches, but they never got beat deep. And I said to Alex Clancy on our crossover show on Thursday, how you win this game is just cutting the Eagles to death and making them tackle in space. And that's exactly the hand that they played to Arizona. When you, as a defensive coordinator, have to realize what the best position is for your players, that's not it. You know that they have issues tackling an open field. Even TJ Edwards had a missed tackle the other day. When that happens, you should realize that this game plan might not be what you want to do going forward. And if you continue to take that conservative approach against Dallas, against these other teams that are going to continue to fight in the NFC East, you're going to drop some of these games. You're not going to get so lucky that Arizona makes a boneheaded play at the end of the game.
Well, especially the way the offense, Gino, has kind of been calling off the dogs. This defense needs to stay aggressive, because it's not like the offense has been raining, 30 points throughout the entire quarter and you're up by 4 scores. You were only up 14-0. That is not a time to stay soft, especially, again, the Eagles offense this year. They've been dominating for the most part, but they're not a great second half offense, as you've mentioned before.
I can say that the takeaway from this game, in my opinion, play your game.
Yeah.
Don't get out of what has done well for you. Don't get away from the areas that make you tick and make you go. What makes you go on offense is remaining fast, remaining physical, getting the ball to playmakers. They still have to put together a good second half. We still have to see that. On defense, allow your guys to go out there and be aggressive. Don't play soft, and don't be Jim Schwartz 2.0, because that's exactly what we wanted to get away from, and it felt very reminiscent of that the other day.
The Eagles still get the win. They're 5-0, 20-17 over the Arizona Cardinals. We'll take a first look at the upcoming massive Sunday night matchup against the 4-1 Dallas Cowboys. It's Dallas week. Subscribe to the podcast on all platforms. We have crossover Thursday as well with Locked On Cowboys, and a show on Friday. Again, free and available on all podcast platforms, on YouTube as well. And make sure you hit us up on Twitter at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase LOE, and at GC24_football. As always, everybody, thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.